It's been about 65 years since Midway has actually opened up their doors. So with that being said, there's a whole bunch of games you guys can play from Midway or maybe Atari games because they got some of them from the Atari, the original Atari before that was shut down, in favor of a different Atari, which you guys know as Infogrames. But here's the thing about Midway. They brought out a bunch of classic games you guys love to play and remember. Doesn't matter if it's arcade games or it could just be console games like maybe Rampage, Total Destruction, the Spy Hunter games, the Mortal Kombat, you name it. Everywhere you go, you always see Midway. But the one very thing that I always grew up with was Midway Arcade Treasures. It's a compilation of arcade titles, which was available on PS2 and then later on the Xbox and GameCube. There was also later versions of the whole compilations where they had sequels. They had 2 and 3, and also an extended version, which I'll get to at some point. There was also this deluxe version, which combines 2 and 3 together for the PC. So Midway Arcade Treasures was developed by Digital Eclipse. Now let me just say something about this game too. Now, we know that 2 and 3 came out, but now later copies of Midway Arcade Treasures will go on to have the same cover art as the sequels. So I guess they were trying to line up, so they just call it Midway Arcade Treasures 1. Didn't have to put 1 in it. Everyone knows what 2 and 3 are. But in this case, let's talk about Midway Arcade Treasures and see what lives up to hype. But first off, I need to address something, the menu. It's so dumb. You can't even tell what you're playing because they just show the logos and nothing. Later versions changed up the UI and they actually have the title that tells you what game you're actually playing. And that's a good thing because you need to know what you're playing before you even start doing it. Alright, the first game is 720. It's actually a skateboarding game, believe it or not. It's not a bad one. So you go around, you do all these trials like downhill and jumping and whatever it is there is. And there's also these upgrades that you guys can do when it comes to the skateboard. You can have it go a little faster, or maybe you want a helmet for yourself. But it costs you money. How do you get money? Well, by competing. That's all you need to do. Oh, and even if you do fail to compete, you can't go back to do it. So it's all one go. So there's these downhill things, and yeah, they have some of these that have time limits, some of these you need to perform tricks or whatever it is they need to do. And that's pretty much it. But if you don't go to these places fast, a mean-looking tornado will try to kill you. That is ruthless. But anyways, that's all the game pretty much has. It's you skateboarding. And it's one of the skateboarding games that I've played, which was one of the first few skateboarding games I played on the PS2. So yeah, it's not a bad game. And they do keep track as to like what stuff you've done in the game. So at least the game is self-aware as to what you're doing. If you guys get lost, there's a map, and you can go to wherever you need to go to. But yeah, practice, that's kind of like the thing you'll need to do in this game in order to get good at it. So that's all I gotta say about it. Unfortunately, I can't show you Blaster. Well, I'll just give you a nutshell. It's a first-person sort of shooter game. You go around, you shoot some stuff. But the reason I'm not showing you it is because of health concerns. So health reasons being, I'm not showing you the game. That's all you need to know. Bubbles. Yeah, that's it. It's just called Bubbles. You go around, you pick up some stuff. The bigger you are, the more things you can consume. And after a certain amount of time, you can go to the little thing known as the drain. But be careful, sometimes enemies spawn there. Like seriously, I was just about to get in there and the enemy just hits me as soon as it came out. And as soon as I was just so close to getting in there. But yeah, the bigger your bubble is, the more you'll have access to the drainage. And that's pretty much it. It's a fun game, believe it or not, so make sure you be careful of some traps. Yeah, this game has some hazards you gotta avoid. So, a fun little game to play, not bad. Let's move on to the next one. Alright, I'm gonna talk about Defender 1 and 2. Defender 2 is also known as Stargate. But the thing is, I've briefly mentioned Defender in my Protector video. Defender, you go around, you shoot some enemies, and you gotta make sure no one gets taken. And that's it. The sequel does the exact same thing, but this time has teleporters and some hazards to watch out, like a volcano for example. So yeah, same thing, you get what I mean. But yeah, Defender is a classic game you guys should play. So, but the thing is, it's a bit challenging, just like Protector is. But you know what it is. I've already talked about Protector. They're both blatantly kind of like the same thing, but the only difference is that Protector has a shop system, unlike this game. Gauntlet. It's a cult classic game. You go around these maze things, and you take down hordes of enemies. You destroy the spawns, get some treasure, food, magic, and whatever. And this is one of the few Midway games that became its own series. I've already talked about Gauntlet Legends in one of my videos, how much fun that game is. So if you guys ever wonder what the arcade game is like, give it a check out. It's got a couple of sequels too. Just, whatever it's called. Anyways, this game is kind of like, if you guys play Balloon or Balloon Fight, you get the idea. You pop down enemies and that's it. The sequel does the exact same thing too. So that's basically all I gotta say about Joust 1 and 2. But yeah, the big difference is that even if you try touching enemies right in front of their faces, you're not gonna get hit. You have to be like, kind of like a specific part of the area. You have to be above them or whatever, but watch out. They could actually respawn, just like Balloon. You take these little orb things, and they prevent you from... It prevents enemies from spawning, so make sure you collect these orb thingies, and that's it. Now, if you guys have an Xbox 360, there is a remake of the game with better graphics, so check that out. And it's also backwards compatible in Xbox One, Xbox Series, in case you guys are curious. Clax. Well, this game got ported over to a couple of different systems, notably the Atari Lynx. I think it was on the Lynx, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's also on the Jaguar. Now, at first I wasn't really interested in this game, yada whatever, but surprisingly, it's actually pretty fun. So you take these block thingies, and you have to match them up, and in a couple of different specific ways. The game actually tells you this. You have to either stack them up, or do it by diagonal. But yeah, there are some challenges there, but if you fail a couple of times, then it's kind of game over for you. So yeah, a nice addicting game. Give it a check out if you guys haven't already. Marble Madness. This is actually one of the games I pretty much enjoy playing. It's a marble you control, but what you need to do in this one is that you need to race. And holy cow, it's harder than it looks. Believe it or not, you control this little marble thingy, and you have to overcome obstacles. Now, there is a practice thing to get used to what you're about to get into, but they don't show you that there's obstacles to be in the way. Sometimes they bounce you around, or sometimes they insta-kill you. The faster you go, I'm pretty sure you get more time the next time, but you make sure you have the patience, because it's kind of like a scroller thingy, because it scrolls down when you go down. So watch out for obstacles, and make sure you guys don't take shortcuts like me falling down. Who would have thought that marble was going to be made out of glass? It could have been made out of rubber or something. But yeah, a fun little game for you guys to play. Definitely check it out when you guys can. Paperboy, and a memorable one too. You go around, you throw in newspapers at people's houses, but depending which difficulty, it gets harder and harder. And what I mean is that there's a whole bunch of obstacles in the way, like people, or maybe cars. People are trying to kill you for no reason being, and whatever else there is. This game also got console ported, by the way, like the NES for example. The one thing I should mention is that if you somehow get past this, and listen, it doesn't matter which difficulty you play, it's still hard regardless. There's actually a bonus stage where you can go around and make some jumps and whatever, and maybe target practice some stuff. Oh, come on, you see I point blank made that. But that's the thing about this game. You have to study your controls or whatever. You gotta get used to it at least. Seriously, this bicycle is not studied. But hey, it's realistic, and I know what I'm talking about because I rode on bikes before. So, give this game a chance at least too. There is a Nintendo 64 game that is Paperboy, but when am I ever going to talk about that one? Rampage, another cult classic game. You go around as 3 players, by the way, and you destroy these buildings. And by the way, there is a movie that is also the same thing like the game. The giant monsters will go around and destroy cities and whatever else too. There's a couple of different video games, including like the one I mentioned before, Total Destruction, which also comes with not just this game, but also its other counterpart, World Tour, on GameCube, PS2, and Wii. So maybe I'll talk about that whenever I get the chance to keep playing that game. I have it, but who knows when I'll cover it. It's another cult classic game, so check this game out if you have to. Rampart. Okay, I have no idea what I'm doing. So from what I understand, you build around these castle thingies, and you put in cannons. And by the way, this is like the first time I'm playing this game, so I had no idea what I was doing. So I apologize for the footage. So you put these cannons on your castle, and you destroy these boats. And somehow, some way, my first try, I somehow won. I don't know if I should make a comparison. It's kind of similar to Missile Command, kind of, because you have to aim directly where you might know where the boat's going to be at. Because these cannons take a little bit to get to these boats. After you destroy a certain amount of boats, you win. And then you move on to the next stage. That's all I kind of have to say about that one. But before I do wrap up this part, I should mention something. You have to also repair your castle. It took me a little while to figure out what I was supposed to do, but at the end, not a bad game, but a little complicated to say the least. Road Blasters. I heard this was also on the links. Believe it or not, it's actually a pretty fun game. It took me a little while to figure out what I was doing because I thought I was messing up the controls, but what you need to do is that you need to drive to wherever destination you need to be at, and when you do that, you have to shoot down these enemies. So while you do that, shoot the orange ones, and when you do that, you actually get some gas. You'll need that, trust me. You're going to need gas in order to complete these stages. If you run out of gas, the game's over. But if you manage to bypass a checkpoint or a lap, your gas will refuel, and you'll actually get some fuel upgrades as well. A fun game to play, definitely recommended. Alright, I'm putting up another picture. It's a game called Robotron. I'm not showing you guys what the game is. Just like my blaster part of what I was saying, health concerns. And what it is, it's supposed to be more like a twin-stick shooter game. But again, I can't show you this because of health reasons. So, I don't know, just play on your own risk. That's all I gotta say. Satan's Hollow. Well, believe it or not, it feels like a clone to Space Invaders. But it's more of a difficult one too, because enemies just fly around wherever they feel like, and it's harder for you to shoot at them too. But sometimes the most ridiculous thing is that the enemies shoot you or try to kill you close up to your face. The good news though is that you do have this energy shield thingy that you can prevent yourself from getting hit by them. I know I said the game is called Satan's Hollow. Well, what if I told you guys you could shoot Satan in this game? Yeah, you could shoot Satan in this game. I'm not making this up. Overall, it's just a Space Invaders clone. I really have nothing else to say about this game. I just got bored of it. Sinistar. Well, I really have nothing else to say about this. You fly around in space, shoot these enemies down. But surprisingly, the asteroids doesn't hurt you. You'd think it'd be a twin-stick shooter game because, you know, some space shooters games could do that, but sadly, this isn't it. So, it gets bored, and it just goes on and on. I don't know. Next game. Now we're talking up my alley. Smash TV. And no, I did not get my name from the game, if asking. But this is one of the cult classic games I've actually played. So you go around, it's a twin-stick shooter game. It's kind of like a game show thingy. You can play up to 2 players, and that's pretty much it. Go around, shoot them enemies, bosses, and more. Collect a lot of money, keys, and whatever. And you can win a car, or maybe something else. This game has high replay value because you can choose whichever path you want to go. There's some gadgets and power-ups you guys can use. A pretty good game. It got ported over to several different systems, including the NES. Yes, you heard that right. The NES version of this game pretty much uses 2 controllers. One for the movement and one for shooting. And if you want to play 2-player in that one, you need a multi-tab. But yeah, this one has a lot of console ports. So, give those guys a check out, including this one. Splat. All you do is throw food at each other. That's pretty much it. Spy Hunter. This game got a sequel, believe it or not, so you drive around and you shoot at vehicles. I have no idea what I'm doing in this game, but it's actually quite funny to play. You shoot down enemies, and at times you can feel like you want to be an in-game bully, but it's also there's plenty like curves you gotta watch out, overcome too, so you gotta like really be careful. There's obstacles and whatever else there is, and there's enemies for you guys to fight. Hey guys, watch this. It's gonna be like this in-game bully to this motorcycle. You see that? I could just do that at any time. Oh come on, that's not fair. Super Sprint. Well, it's a racing game, of course. It's kind of like one of those ones where you have to like control it in a tank control type of way. So you really have to get used to control when you first play it, but once you get playing, you'll get pretty much used to it. It's not a bad game, but that's all I can say. There's a bunch of tracks, and I think there's some obstacles in the way too. And there's also sometimes shortcuts to some tracks, but sometimes these things like to close up on you before you can take the shortcuts. Root Beer Tapper. I actually played this one a lot back then. Your objective is to pass around beer at enemies as fast as you can before they try to take you down. But also you gotta be careful because they'll throw some glass at you. The glass breaks and you have to start all over in terms of the level. But if they come too close and they grab you, then it's also game over. So you have to really use strategy. But holy cow, it gets harder and harder. I'm not making this up. Tubin. Oh gosh. This game has the worst controls I've ever dealt with. Seriously, how am I supposed to know how to play this one? You use the left and right sticks to use your hands to move the freaking floaty. But the thing is, it's harder to master because there's no practice in this one. There's 2 players, which I can tell you guys, but that's all you're gonna get from me. There's no way I'm gonna be able to play this game. It seriously just feels like it's unplayable at times. But there is this throw thingy where you can try to hit your opponent. I think the whole thing is that you're supposed to win a race or take down your opponent. But I can never figure out the game because before I get the chance to try to get used to controls, I'm always taken down by enemies. I really wish I was making this up, but trust me, it's harder than it looks. The last game, Vindigators. It's a tank game, but it uses the same nonsense that I mentioned as the left and right stick, but this one I can actually get through with this one because you have little time to get used with the controls. So you use the left stick to go right, and you use the right stick to go left. That doesn't make any sense around here. So you need to watch your fuel because if you don't watch out, then it's game over for you. It's for your health, and you also use it so you don't run out of gas either. So it's kind of a mixed bag of both. You can also rotate your tanks to left and right by using like triggers or whatever too, which is pretty cool. But I will just go on to say that there's also some upgrades you guys can use for your tank, so that way you can blast through enemies much easier. Sometimes you upgrade your fuel or maybe your shield, dinghies, and whatever, so there's a lot to get in this one. You gotta grab some keys too. There's like 2 doors. I can't really say what the differences between the 2 keys are, besides the color of course. Maybe it's just easier for one thing than the other, but I don't know. But all I can say is it's not a bad game. There's also a part 2, but it plays pretty identical, which was included in the Midway Arcade Origins game. I don't know, it feels like I was playing the exact same game, it just has part 2 in it. Wow. Okay, so this may have been a little longer than I thought it was gonna be. So, I will just say this. It's not a bad collection. There's some good games, some bad games, some okay games in here, but that's about it. So, stay tuned to Midway Arcade Treasures 2, where I play even more games from Midway Arcades.